It's January 2026, and today, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi turns 75.
75. And, regardless of your politics, the data we're looking at today shows something of a biological anomaly.
It really does. I mean, most leaders at that age are winding down. Our deep dive today suggests he's accelerating.
It's a fascinating longitudinal data set, and we're not just looking at policy papers here. We have sources on his biological markers, his ideological history, and a really granular breakdown of that huge security crisis from last year.
And that's our mission, right? To connect the dots.
Yeah.
Between the personal habits, the diet, the sleep, and these massive geopolitical outcomes. How does a man who started selling tea end up orchestrating something as complex as Operation Sindoor?
Well, it really starts with what the sources call his metabolic stability. We hear about the 16-hour workdays all the time, but it's the quality of that energy that's so striking.
Okay, let's talk about the schedule. Waking up between 4:0 and 5:0 a.m., the yoga. But I have to, push back on the sleep thing. 3 to 4 hours a night. I mean, medically, shouldn't that be a disaster for cognitive function?
For most of us, yes, absolutely. But the sources point to this specific mechanism he uses called yoga nidra.
Yoga nidra.
It's not just a nap, it's a very specific conscious relaxation technique. They call it psychic sleep. Essentially, it allows the brain to process fatigue much, much faster. He's hacking his recovery time.
So it's efficiency over duration. And that same discipline, it extends to his diet. It's incredibly austere.
Oh, unbelievably so. Khichdi, moringa parathas, mostly warm water.
And the fasting. The sources say for 50 years he's observed the Navratri fast.
For 50 years, 9 days, twice a year, often on just warm water.
Even during, diplomatic tours? That sounds physically exhausting.
It would be. But the argument is that it serves a karmayogi function. It's about detaching action from physical craving. If you can control your own hunger for 9 days while running a country, you're training your mind to stay level during a real crisis.
Which is a perfect segue to where that mental toughness was forged.
Yeah.
We all know the tea seller story, but the sources really focus on a period I wasn't that familiar with. The wanderer phase.
This is so crucial. From 1968 to 1970, he basically vanished. He went to the Himalayas, he was trying to become a monk.
Right.
And the really interesting part, he was rejected. The Ramakrishna mission turned him away because he didn't have a college degree.
Wow. Imagine that sliding doors moment, right? If they'd said yes, history would be completely different.
Completely. But the real skill building came a few years later, during the emergency in 1975. This is where the monk, in a way, becomes the spy.
The underground years?
Exactly. He's living in hiding to avoid arrest, using disguises a Sikh, a saffron-clad monk, to move anti-government literature around.
It reads like a thriller. But analytically, that's where he's learning how to run a network, how to use secrecy, how to operate under pressure.
Precisely. That underground network eventually becomes the organizational machine of the BJP. He learned very early that information is power and secrecy is survival.
And we saw that exact intel-first mindset play out in the biggest event of 2025, Operation Sindoor.
That was the ultimate test. After that awful terror attack in Pahalgam last April, I think the world expected the usual diplomatic statement.
Yeah, condemnation.
Instead, Modi authorized what was called a diplomatic decoupling.
And that was the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty, wasn't it?
That was it. A huge escalation. You're not just sanctioning a country, you're threatening its water supply. And while everyone was focused on the water, the Indian Air Force launched the May 7th strikes.
The sources describe a massive air battle, something like 114 aircraft involved. That is high-intensity warfare.
It shows what the analysis calls strategic resilience. At 74 years old, he didn't blink. The ceasefire only came after India established total air superiority. It suggests that ascetic discipline we talked about
So fasting, the control...
translates directly into high-risk political will.
It's the synthesis of the ancient and the hyper-modern, isn't it? You have a leader walking barefoot on grass for Panchatattva yoga in the morning and then directing a networked air war in the afternoon.
And he's trying to institutionalize that resilience. His whole Viksit Bharat 2047 vision, it's all about building infrastructure that will outlast him.
Which I think leaves us with a really provocative question for you to think about.
Yeah.
We live in this age of burnout, always looking for the next life hack or app to manage our stress. But maybe the answer isn't new at all. Is this kind of extreme, almost ascetic self-control the only path to sustained high-level leadership in today's world? Or is that just a price that's too high for most of us to even consider paying?
That's a lot to think about. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.